Warrior, the horse who led the charge. The magnificent horse galloped forward into the sparse wood. Bullets whizzed past, thudding into tree trunks and cutting down other horses galloping alongside him. Shells whined and exploded, machine guns rattled, and injured men cried out in pain. The noise and smoke were terrifying, but the horse didn't waver. He pressed on, carrying his rider into the heat of battle. Warrior, the perfect name for this mighty horse, was a thoroughbred. A fine chestnut stallion, he was born on the Isle of Wight in 1908. His owner, Jack Seeley, was also from a distinguished family and a close friend of Winston Churchill, who would one day become Prime Minister of Great Britain. Jack had grown up with Warrior, so when the First World War broke out, he took his loyal horse to fight with him. Together they arrived in France on the 11th of August 1914. Now, it was the 30th of March 1918, 4 years later, and the daring duo were riding together into battle for the last time. The war was drawing to an end, and the German army had recently launched its final offensive, pushing forward with thousands of men. In northern France, in a place called Moreuil Wood, the Allied troops were fighting back. Jack Seeley was now commander of the Canadian Cavalry Brigade. He led the charge, as usual, mounted on Warrior. Whatever happened, he knew his trusty horse would not let him down. Danger was nothing new to Warrior. He had galloped into action on the very first day of the Battle of the Somme, a 141-day battle in which nearly 1 million men were either wounded or killed. There had been many other narrow escapes. At the Battle of Passchendaele, soldiers had dug him out of deep mud after he was buried when a shell exploded nearby, and twice he had escaped in the nick of time as the burning beams of his stable roof collapsed around him. He had suffered many injuries, and yet, miraculously, he had always managed to survive. No wonder the soldiers loved Warrior and patted his flanks whenever they passed him. To them, this big, handsome horse was a lucky charm. What's more, he never showed a glimmer of fear. Unsurprisingly, war is a traumatic experience for most animals. The terrifying noises and strange smells usually send them running away in fear. Yet Warrior would stand calm and still as shells exploded around him and bullets whistled overhead. And Seeley usually rode at the head of the column, so he and Warrior were first in the line of fire. The horse's bravery gave the soldiers extra courage to face the terrors of the war. The Germans were eventually defeated at the Battle of Moreuil Wood, and this marked a turning point in the war. Then, in November 1918, the war finally came to an end. Warrior had survived. He returned with his owner to the Isle of Wight, where he was hailed as a hero. Jack Seeley, who was now a general, continued to look after his trusty horse. Despite the injuries Warrior had suffered, he was still a horse that loved to gallop. On the 30th of March 1922, exactly 4 years to the day since he had led the charge at the Battle of Moreuil Wood, he won a famous point-to-point race across the island. Warrior died in 1941 at the ripe old age of 33. His obituary was written in the Times newspaper, something that was unheard of for an animal. Jack Seeley wrote a book about his famous horse, and in 2014 Warrior was awarded the PDSA Dickin Medal, the highest military award an animal can receive.